Hello, everyone. I'm Tom Wistrcill.
I'm JT Wistrcill.
We'd like to welcome you to another edition of From the Couch, Week 15 NFL. We're getting close to the end. Playoff spots are going. Some teams are falling off. Some are rising up.
He had to look at me when he said it.
And getting ready. So we'll talk about that as we get through. But as we usually do here, we're going to go back and forth. Our 5 takeaways from the week that was Week 15 of the 2020 NFL season. JT, you're up first. Where are we starting?
Yeah, unfortunately, you alluded to it when you looked at me when you said the teams that are falling off, and unfortunately, that is the Minnesota Vikings, who have now fallen to 6-8 and are on the outside looking in of the wild card race. I believe they're now in 9th because the Bears at the moment have the tiebreaker with the latest head-to-head win, and the Cardinals, who took care of business. And you cannot let Mitch Trubisky's led offense of the Bears score 33 points on you. 27 points should be enough to win against this Bears defense.
Good.
Yeah, the offense moved the ball. There's a reason this offense has 2 Pro Bowlers, a wide receiver in the top 10 in receiving touchdowns, and a quarterback who since November played unbelievably. This is the defense's fault. And the young corners have actually improved. The problem is the front 7. Going into the year, their 4 best players in the front 7, Michael Pierce opted out to COVID, Danielle Hunter misses the season with the neck injury, Anthony Barr hurt in the first few weeks, and Eric Kendricks, the perfect epitome for their season, hurts his calf and hasn't played since, doing karaoke and pregame warm-ups. It's just tragic. I'm going to really emphasize the Hunter one, though, Danielle Hunter's absence. 2019, Danielle himself had 14.5 sacks. The entire Vikings defensive line this season, only 11.5. He is sorely missed. You cannot get after the quarterback, and it's what is forcing this defense to be so bad. You can't get pressure on the quarterback, and it's why more than likely they're not going to make the playoffs, as they're in the bottom half of the league in points allowed and in defense against the run and the pass. So really disappointed with this Vikings defense.
It was a must-win for the Vikings. We talked about it last week, that the winner of the game was probably going to make the playoffs. The loser was probably not. Unfortunately, you could probably bury your Vikings again.
They're not dead, but the ship is on a nosedive.
Yes, I would say so. All right, so since you talked about your Vikes, I guess I better talk about my Steelers.
Yep.
3-game slide. I've been a Steelers fan since 1979. So that's many years. Do the math on that, right? So the most disappointing loss I've ever had as a Steelers fan is when Neil O'Donnell threw those interceptions against the Cowboys in the Super Bowl. I think the game against the Bengals was the second worst loss I've ever felt as a Steelers fan, because we looked awful. We looked like a team that had only won 2 games instead of the Bengals being a 2-game winning team. So couldn't do anything right. Offense couldn't move the ball. Defense couldn't get off the field. They're running the ball on us. I know we have injuries. I know we have some problems, but you got to beat the Bengals. You beat the Bengals in your AFC North champs. So I was just looking at the conference standings here a little bit ago. JT, do you know there's only one team that's over 500 in the AFC who didn't win last weekend? And that's the Pittsburgh Steelers. Every other team that's over 500 won. Why? Because they know they have to win. They're fighting for the playoffs. So the Steelers made it tough on themselves, because now they host the Colts on Sunday, which will be a tough game, and then they go to the Browns. And that game very well could be for the AFC North crown now. The Steelers could start 11-0 and potentially lose 6 games in a row, lose their last 5 regular season, and then lose a road playoff game. They would have the way it potentially going to play out. So who knows? I don't know what to expect. I have super low expectations. I had low expectations, but I thought we'd win like 17-10 against the Bengals. But after that, I don't know what to think. It's an S show. I won't swear I won't swear on this show, but it's at Pittsburgh right now. And I wore the hat because even though I'm mad at you, I still love you. So what do you think?
Nothing would be more 2020 than an 11-0 Pittsburgh Steelers team losing the division to the Cleveland Browns. Crazy to think that could happen. Also unfortunate it came with Ryan Finley at quarterback, who was so bad last year that they actually benched Andy Dalton because they wanted to give Finley a chance, 4th-round pick. 3 games, they had to bench him again. So bad. Really didn't think he'd ever get a shot again, and he does, and puts on what's going to be the best performance of his career, mostly using his legs being the most effective, I thought, honestly.
Yeah, real. So we'll see. All right, enough on that. Let's move to point 2. JT, what do you got?
I got to talk about the Bills that just continue to ball, win against the Broncos 48-19. They're hitting their stride at the right time. They've won 7 of their last 8 games. Overall in the NFL, they're 5th in points per game, and over their last 4 games, they're averaging 36 points per game. So Brian Daboll, Josh Allen, Stephon Diggs, they are killing it right now. And this defense is starting to play a little bit better. They're average by most metrics, but 4 of those last 8 games, they've held their opponents under 20 points. So you're seeing a little bit of improvements. They're deep on the defensive line, and they got a shutdown corner, which if you can get back to the passer, and you got a guy who can create a turnover, that gives them hope. But everything rests on this offense, which is extremely impressive. And I really wouldn't want to play the Bills right now. I think Sean McDermott deserves Coach of the Year love for helping this team win the division for the first time since I've been alive. So it's crazy. The Bills are a great story. They're fun to watch right now and are very dangerous come playoff time.
Yeah, really impressed with the Bills. I'm actually going to switch my order up because I want to talk about the Bills a little bit in my point I wanted to bring up. So I really think the AFC Championship game is going to be either the Titans or the Bills at the Chiefs. And so I've been thinking about what that game could potentially look like. Who has a better chance in that game? And you know, to me, it's a little bit of a toss-up. I might give the Bills a slight edge right now just because of how explosive Josh Allen could be. Mm-hmm. He has such a high ceiling, but I think he also has a low valley too.
Yes.
And so I guess where I'm at in that is thinking whether it's the Titans or Bills at the Chiefs, I think the Chiefs will determine the outcome of the game. Because if they play the way they can play, then it's no contest. They win. So something has to go wrong for the Chiefs to help either the Titans or the Bills beat them in the AFC Championship. Either somebody like Mahomes has to get hurt, or he's got to throw a bunch of interceptions, or the weather's got to be so bad that it turns into a running game. And if Edwards-Helaire is hurt for a while, and that means they got to rely on Le'Veon Bell, that could change the game because that means the Chiefs would have to stop the run the whole game, and I don't know if they can do that. So it's almost like I'm sitting thinking to myself, you know, Gal, unless something freaky happens, the Chiefs are going to be in the Super Bowl, and that's just what I see out of there because I just don't know who could score enough points to beat them. So there's my thought on that.
Yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And one thing I'll say before I get into my next point, which funny enough is about the Chiefs, but just Josh Allen in his last playoff game last year, it can't be understated how poorly he performed in certain moments. I mean, throwing a lateral backwards, almost causing a fumble. Yes, it was Deshaun Watson's insane heroics that won them the game, but Allen did not play well. And if he doesn't win a playoff game and they get upset in the first round, he's going to get hit with the same label Lamar Jackson has as a guy who wasn't able to get it done come playoff time.
Yep, we'll see. All right, your next point, JT, what do you got? Number 3.
About those Chiefs and the Super Bowl, potential Super Bowl preview we saw when they took on the Saints this past weekend. Chiefs end up winning 32-29, but it was a really good game. The Saints might have the best defensive line in the NFL. They're extremely deep, and they really did get after it and hit Mahomes with 4 sacks and 11 hits. But it didn't matter. Mahomes, 254 yards, 3 touchdowns, and he was wheeling and dealing. We saw the insane touchdown pass he threw to McCole Hardman. Just threw it in the perfect spot for him to toe drag it into the end zone. And the other thing is, you're not going to be able to stop Mahomes, so stop the run. Well, the Saints didn't do that as the Chiefs ran for 179 yards. You highlighted the Edwards-Helaire injury, which is concerning, but Le'Veon Bell is still a really nice insurance policy as a backup, so they should be all right there. And yeah, like you said, it's just going to be really hard to stop the Saints because that offense is pretty much unstoppable. And to beat them, you almost have to play perfectly, which the Saints did not do. In Drew Brees' first night back, he had a pick, which really hurt them. And they also, right before the half, if you remember, there was a punt, or I think it was a kickoff actually, and they fumbled the ball, the Chiefs did. It rolled into the end zone. The Saints had an opportunity to jump on top of it and score a touchdown. Instead, the guy misses it, knocks it out of bounds, and it's a touchback instead of what would have been 7 points for them. So really blown opportunity. No Michael Thomas also hurt the Saints, and Drew Brees, it was his first start back. So I think they'll be fine, but it just goes to show you got to play perfect to beat these Chiefs. Saints didn't. Chiefs continue to roll.
Yes, they do. Roll on. We'll see. I'm going to talk about the NFC Least a little bit here. So we have confirmation that the best a team can do in there is finish 500. So it won't be an over 500 champion. Basically, it's a 3-team race with the Washington football team having the best chance to win. They host the Panthers, and then they go to the Eagles. The Cowboys host the Eagles and then go to the Giants. The Giants go to the Ravens and host the Cowboys. They probably have the toughest road because they got to play out the Ravens this week. So I think it comes down to this, right? So Washington has to beat the Panthers at home Sunday, and then that makes them 7-8, and then they have to go to the Eagles to win the division. Whereas Dallas, if they beat the Eagles this week, which they could do at home, and then they go to the Giants and win, then all of a sudden we have a tie, and I think Dallas has the tiebreaker there. So, I mean, I still think Washington's going to do it, but, you know, it's amazing still to think to myself that one of those teams is going to host a playoff game against somebody like the Bears or Tampa or the Rams or Cardinals. Yeah. One of those teams is going to end up playing there. Probably not the Vikings. So, you know, it's just a mess, but nonetheless, I still will give credit to where it's due. I think Ron Rivera, you know, if they win the division, I'm not going to give him Coach of the Year.
He should win it.
But, I mean, considering the dumpster fire that is that division and what he's got going on there, and who knows who his quarterback's going to be, right? We got problems with Alex Smith, Haskins, we know what's going on there, and now with him. So who knows what's going to happen there. But nonetheless, it is truly, it's like a slow motion car crash, like there's two hills and there's cars on the ice kind of sliding down. Like, I know they're going to eventually hit, but you got to watch just to see what happens. That's what the NFC Least is like for me.
Yes, it's undoubtedly like that. And I'm just going to carry over with what you said because this is one of my points. It's about Dwayne Haskins. I was so high on him coming out. I'd watched almost every game he played at Ohio State, and I'm looking at him like, well, look at the numbers he's put up compared to Kyler Murray. You know what? Dwayne Haskins is the best quarterback in this class. That was the hill I sat upon. Man, was I wrong. I was dead wrong. Kyler's fantastic. A conversation for another day is that 2019 draft class is 1 for 4 on surefire franchise QBs, with Daniel Jones and Drew Lock still very much up in the air.
You're right.
And Haskins just genuinely looking like a bust, which is really hard for me to say. And watching his Seattle game, he has these moments and flashes where you're like, oh, there's still something there. But he's still really inaccurate, and he makes poor decisions with the football, throwing 2 interceptions against a very meh Seattle secondary. So let's talk about what's wrong with Haskins, though. Obviously, the first thing is that lack of maturity. Hires a private dancer when he's his team's only healthy quarterback. Kyle Allen, Alex Smith, they're both hurt. Smith may be able to come back, but we don't know. Haskins got benched earlier this year. This was his second chance to redeem it. What if he plays well, helps his team get into the playoffs, and what if he even won him a playoff game? This is his chance to win his job back, and instead, I'm going to have a private dancer because I want to. It's a very selfish act. He was originally voted a captain. The Washington football team pulled his captainship as well. And this is the lack of maturity he was benched for. He's been criticized for his lack of preparation as well. I mean, he didn't even just get benched to be the second string quarterback. They moved him all the way back to the third quarterback. He started 1 week and didn't even dress the rest. Healthy scratch. It's crazy how far he's fallen. I was so in on this guy, and it's really disappointing to see what's become of him. So I hope Dwayne Haskins is able to turn it around, but unfortunately, I don't know if he's going to be able to because he's gotten a few second chances, and it just hasn't worked out.
The quarterback room in Washington will look very different next year. And I don't think Rivera is the type of guy that's going to put up with that. Yeah. So I think it's heading to a crash and burn there. So we'll see. I'm going to talk about one of my least favorite teams. It pains me to do this, but I can't believe the Cleveland Browns. So, you know, they've won 5 of 6. Their loss is that, you know, potentially the game of the year last week, the Ravens-Browns, you know, 47-42, they lost that.
Crapshoot.
You know, so they go to the Jets on Sunday. So, you know, that should be a win, right? Sure. Even though the Jets are coming off a victory, you would think the Browns will win that game. And then they're going to host the Steelers there for potentially the division title. Now, the Browns' thing to do would be to either lose to the Jets or beat the Jets and then come home and get blown out by the Steelers. That would be the typical Browns thing to do. I don't think that happens this year. There's a little thing out there in football called Mo. You know Mo, right?
Yes.
Momentum. And I think the Browns are going to have it. I think they're going to have, like I said, it pains me to say that, but right now they'd have to be favored against the Steelers as well, as bad as the Steelers are playing. And they get them at home, and they're going to be fighting for the division title. And that means they're going to get a home playoff game, and they'll probably win that game. And then wherever they go for the second game, they're going to be a tough out for somebody if Baker keeps playing that way. So it's amazing for me to think that, you know, that they've turned into a good football team. That, to me, is probably where my vote would go to Coach of the Year if they end up winning the division. Because the team is essentially the same players as last year, and they have potential to be a division winner. So hats off to Kevin Stefanski for doing a great job in a really difficult situation there in Cleveland, where there's usually all these problems and messes and off the field issues, and right now they don't have any. They're playing their best football, and we'll see what happens at the end of the year.
You can win in January if you can run the football. And this team does it exceptionally well. Best 1-2 punch in the backfield and an exceptional offensive line. And then you even flip to the other side. They're really dominant in the trenches there, led by Myles Garrett. And as you said, I mean, we've talked about the other Coach of the Year contenders already with McDermott and Rivera, but honestly, I do think you probably have to give it to...
If he wins the division,
Stefanski.
I think you have to.
I agree. I mean, it seemed like an impossible job to turn around this culture. Many men have tried, and
Yes.
Kevin Stefanski's the first to do it.
Yep, good for him. So, okay, last one, JT, what do you got?
What have the Jets just done by winning that game?
They called it the worst win in NFL history, right?
I agree. 23-20, they beat the Rams. We can have a conversation. I've gone back and forth so many times on the Rams when they beat the Buccaneers. They look so good in some of these games, and then they lose to the winless Jets. It's just, I don't even know what to do with the Rams. But let's focus on the Jets. The week before they beat the Rams, they lost. They traveled to the West Coast and lost 40-3 against the Seahawks. So it's like, oh, they're great. They're taking care of their proverbial business in this losing the way they have, and then they win. And I think the problem with that is most years it's like, yes, you go out there and win, but it didn't help them. I don't think it boosted morale much, maybe a little bit. Everyone's in there still wants Adam Gates gone. I have a very hard time believing players love him. And you could miss out on Trevor Lawrence, the generational franchise quarterback prospect we think he is. If you want to know how special he is, watch that Clemson team versus Notre Dame the first time, and then in the ACC Championship game. I mean, what can he do? Trevor, he's mobile, fits the NFL typical prototypical quarterback that way. He's accurate. Prototypical. Thank you. As JT's spelling quest continues, or pronunciation. He's also accurate on deep and intermediate throws. He's a perfect leader. The guy you'd want in your locker room for a team who, I mean, who's the best quarterback in my lifetime the Jets have had?
They haven't had any.
Yeah, exactly.
Mark Sanchez.
So Mark, they want someone to be able to reminisce some parts of Joe Namath, and that's who Lawrence would be. But they won this meaningless game. They give the Jaguars the pick. And if we're looking at these final two team schedule, the Jaguars play the Bears and the Colts. I'd be stunned if they beat either of those teams, even though their one win is actually against the Colts. That came in week one, drastically different teams. And for the Jets, they play the Browns and the Patriots. So they should still lose, but tiebreaker goes to the Jaguars. I really like the Ohio State quarterback, Justin Fields. He's not Trevor Lawrence. And I really think long-term this will go down as the worst win in NFL history if Lawrence transforms a team the way we think he's going to.
Yep. Yeah, I agree. We'll wait and see. There's been a lot of hype for other quarterbacks too, but, the one thing about Trevor Lawrence that's interesting is every draft guru, every scout that talks about him says he's a can't-miss guy. And they just don't do that. Usually there's a few naysayers.
Yeah.
There's no naysayers there.
Yeah.
And so we'll wait and see. He might not win the Heisman, but which is too bad because he missed a couple of games. It's hard to hold that against him. But nonetheless, we'll see. That was a bad win either way you look at it. So
the worst.
My last point, I'm going to talk about the Tampa Bay Buccaneers a little bit. So they're going to probably win their last two games. They're 9-5 right now. They go to the Lions and host the Falcons. I think they win both those games. So they're going to finish 11-5. But the Saints are going to finish 12-4, so they won't win the division. The Buccaneers won't win the division. But if there's one team in the NFC who doesn't win the division, who's going to make some noise, it's going to be them. I think their defense is solid, and they have enough playmakers. I mean, I love their playmakers on offense. I think they're just kind of rounded into shape with their receiving core. And we know what Brady's like in the playoffs. The playoffs are a different animal. That's what I've had to drill into my son's head here over the years. The playoffs are different. And the cream rises to the top, and the cream is Tom Brady. And so you surround him with the best receiving core he's ever had.
Yes.
His entire career. You give him a decent defense. It's not the best defense he's ever played. The Patriots have had better defense than the Bucs have had. But it's a good defense. And so, yeah, he might need to put up 35 points to win games in the playoffs, but he can do it with that offense. Now, they're not running the ball the way that I would kind of want them to, but, it pains me to say that, but Antonio Brown might end up being really good in the playoffs. Who knows? But all I know is the Buccaneers are good enough to make some noise. I wouldn't want to play them in the playoffs, and I still wouldn't be surprised if on Super Bowl Sunday we're talking about Tampa Bay.
Honestly, I wouldn't be either, just because it's Tom Brady. It's such a talented receiving core. And, they will really look like they could be in trouble. And then they squeeze out the game against Minnesota. And then they go down and beat Atlanta in typical Brady fashion, of course. It looks like, oh man, how is this 13 I believe it was 14-3, and then of course Brady comes back against the Falcons like he always does. But yeah, I mean, when you got Tom Brady on your side, it's just, I mean, anything's possible.
Yeah, 3 weeks ago they played the Chiefs and lost by 3 points.
Yeah.
So I mean, we could see what happens there, but I won't count them out. Like right now, if I'm saying who's going to be in the Super Bowl, I think the Chiefs will be in the Super Bowl, and on the NFC I got about 3 teams, but one of them's the Buccaneers.
Yeah.
And we'll wait and see.
Yeah, if I can interject even really quickly. I'm not saying that I don't like them still, but you talked about the Packers being your team.
Yeah.
And yes, did they win? Yeah, but it was still kind of an ugly win against a crappy Panthers team. So this is what we talk about. It's just so hard to tell who's going to win the NFC. It's going to be really fascinating to watch how it plays out.
We'll find out. It'll be this Sunday night is Titans at Packers, so that'll be a good. That'll be a really good game. And again, that could be a Super Bowl preview for all we know. So we'll see, because after that, then the Packers go to the Bears. So they have 2 tough games left there in the NFC. But your Vikes aren't catching them.
No,
so
shout out to Trubisky playing better.
There you go. Mitch has been better. So well, good. Well, we hope you've enjoyed our tour through Week 15 of the NFL. And we'll look forward to seeing you next week there on Week 16.
Merry Christmas, everyone. Also, want to throw that in. Thank you guys for always supporting us, and hope you guys have a great holiday season.
All right. We'll look forward to seeing you next time on another edition of From the Couch. We'll see you next time.